Director Enzo Castellari is arguably the king of Italian genre cinema, the king of Italian action cinema, and undeniably the king of the slow motion action sequence. So if you've clicked on this video, no doubt you're no stranger to Enzo Castellari or any of his films. So many classics that he made. There was Keoma, there was 1990, the Bronx Warriors, Bronx Warriors 2, The Last Shark, Warriors of the Wasteland, just to name a few. And that's not even to mention his crime movies and his giallo and all points in between. So Enzo is a highly respected filmmaker. I guess you'd say his most notable fan is Quentin Tarantino, a bit of a cult figure and a mainstream figure in his own right. So Quentin Tarantino, of course, director of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, From Dusk Till Dawn, Django Unchained, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Jackie Brown, so many others. But we are here to talk about the man, Enzo Castellari, and most notably something he said about being a genre filmmaker, a question he was asked often, being a genre filmmaker versus being an auteur filmmaker. And what did Enzo Castellari have to say about that? Well, he had a kind of hilariously disparaging view of auteur filmmakers. You know, the kinds of guys, the Woody Allens or the Roman Polanskis or the Stanley Kubricks and so on and so forth. Not that he mentioned any of these people by name, but he did just generalise in terms of auteur filmmakers, or people that consider themselves auteur filmmakers. And when asked about this, Enzo Castellari basically said, if you're watching a movie and starting to feel a bit bored, then it's probably the work of an auteur filmmaker as opposed to a genre filmmaker. So needless to say, Enzo Castellari didn't think of himself as an auteur filmmaker in the slightest. He thought of himself more as a genre filmmaker. Enzo Castellari basically said words to the effect that he regards himself as part of the audience. What do I want to see? What do I want to see happen? What sort of things would I like in a movie? Are there elements that I enjoy, like revenge and so on and so forth? What's the payoff? And why should I be sitting for the, in my opinion, the the golden time, running time of a film, which is 90 minutes? Why should I be sitting there watching it? And what's the payoff? And I think that's an attitude that we all wish more filmmakers had these days. I mean, Enzo Castellari was right on the money in terms of the priorities a filmmaker should have in terms of their movies and their audience, who they're making it for. Enzo Castellari had a very solid idea of what his audience avatar was, the average person that was going to enjoy one of his movies, long before the time of YouTube creators thinking about those sort of things and YouTube gurus thinking about those sort of things. So he knew exactly who his audience was, he knew exactly what they wanted to see, and that is the reason that his movies, although much derided at the time by critics, have outlasted, literally outlasted any of the Oscar winners from those times. I mean, I can't remember what film won the Best Picture Oscar of 1983, but I do know that I immensely enjoy 1983's Warriors of the Wasteland. So Enzo made a bunch of classic movies for my money. My favourites were his what people refer to as his Bronx Warriors trilogy, and that is, of course, 1990, The Bronx Warriors, and Bronx Warriors 2, and Warriors of the Wasteland. And these movies shared cast and crew members and screenwriters, and even though Warriors of the Wasteland is, on paper, technically unrelated to Bronx Warriors 1 and 2, they do very much feel like a trilogy, at least thematically, and they do feel like they take place in the same extended universe. So Enzo Castellari did come up with the idea of the extended universe long before Marvel or any of those companies, and he was a visionary in that regard. So sometimes a filmmaker can be, I guess you'd say, an auteur or artistic or highly skilled without realising any of the above. Enzo's slow-mo action scenes are amazing. He took a fairly heavy hand with the cinematography in his movies. They all have a certain look. The action scenes always had a certain impact that you just don't see. You never saw that sort of impact before or since. And a lot of contemporary filmmakers could well do with taking a leaf out of Italian filmmaker Enzo Castellari's book. Enzo was finally raised in profile when Quentin Tarantino borrowed the title. I won't say remade, because the movie has nothing to do with Enzo Castellari's original Inglorious Bastards. But Quentin Tarantino loved the title so much that he, let's just say, he borrowed it and created his own vision around that. And Enzo even had a cameo in that movie, and it did, the best thing about it was that it did revive interest in Enzo Castellari's movies, revived interest in films like Inglorious Bastards and Keoma, and 1990, The Bronx Warriors, and Warriors of the Wasteland, and even garnered a new audience for his, let's just say, cancelled movie, Great White, aka The Last Shark, which was basically sued out of existence by the makers of, by the producers of Jaws. And admittedly, it is very close, if not identical, or at least swimming in similar waters of being a carbon copy of Jaws. So unfortunately, it was a bit of a slam dunk case. But in recent years, I don't know how, but certain companies have kind of re-released it as part of that grey area, I guess, of physical media, different zones and things like that. So you can see it now. You can probably see it here on YouTube. I'll try and pin a link in one of the comments if it's still on YouTube. These sort of things can be a bit of a whack-a-mole sometimes. One day they're here, the next they're gone, just like all of us. But The Last Shark is quite an interesting one that you may not have seen. Even if you are a fan of Keoma or 1990, The Bronx Warriors, or Bronx Warriors 2, or The New Barbarians, you might have missed Great White, aka The Last Shark. Movie that kind of gets spoken of in the same breath as Cruel Jaws, and I believe it even shares some stock footage with Cruel Jaws, or Cruel Jaws borrowed stock footage from The Last Shark. I can't remember which, but both very cool Jaws rip-offs, especially The Last Shark, aka Great White. But I guess Enzo is probably best known for 1990, The Bronx Warriors, and this is legitimately one of my favourite movies. It is a comic book come to life, in a sense. In the purest sense, it was heavily inspired by The Warriors and Escape from New York. Mostly The Warriors, though. But Enzo basically took the best elements that he could out of those movies. And as he said about filmmaking, he thought like an audience member. What do they want to see? What do they want the payoff to be? What do they want the revenge to be in this case? And he gave us exactly what we all wanted. And as a result, 1990, the Bronx Warriors, along with Bronx Warriors 2, are two of the most watchable and rewatchable Italian post-apocalyptic / action / sci-fi movies of the late 70s and early 80s, as is Warriors of the Wasteland. So definitely one of the most unique filmmakers, one of the most unsung filmmakers, and there's a lot to respect about these quotes from Enzo about auteur filmmakers often being a bit boring, and also about always placing yourself squarely in the theatre seat of the audience member, or I guess it'd be the lazy boy seat in 2026, because unfortunately the cinema has largely died as an experience, with a few exceptions. Most notable recently are, I guess you'd say, Backrooms, which I've seen, and I'd highly recommend that you check out while it's still original, while it still feels fresh, before the invariable hundreds of imitators appear on the scene. And the other one is Obsession, which I haven't caught yet, but hopefully I will at some stage. But back to the subject, Enzo really did think in those terms. He thought, basically respected the dollars being spent by the cinema-going public far more than someone like James Gunn, for example. I've never been a fan of these superhero movies at the best of times, but these filmmakers do strike me as wanting to push a particular message and a particular agenda first and foremost, and the entertainment, the escapism of the audience sits somewhere in about the 30th row of the cinema. So well back, these people have a complete lack of respect for you, so you really shouldn't support their output with your hard-earned. This isn't even a political thing. I don't really care, to be frank, what these people think, but my point is that when someone's worked a 40-hour week, a 50-hour week, a 60-hour week, they're going to a cinema, they aren't going to church, they don't want to be preached at, they want a bit of escapism, a bit of fun, maybe a bit of nourishment, intellectual nourishment perhaps, though escapism and fun really usually are the primary objectives. You don't want to be paying for one thing and getting something completely unrelated, like someone's 2-hour sit-through of shit, where they've they've duped you into coming to the cinema for one thing, and then they've gone off on a weird, unrelated political rant or self-aggrandizing celluloid rant, which is what I think that Enzo Castellari was the point he was trying to make when he talked about auteur filmmakers. He was very much referring to people like James Gunn, and thankfully audiences have woken up to this. They're going to be more drawn back to filmmakers like Enzo Castellari, films with Enzo Castellari's sensibilities. Entirely different movie to anything that Enzo has made, but that did strike me when I was watching Backrooms. I don't know the social thoughts of the director, the political thoughts, what he thinks is right with the world or wrong with the world, and that's fine. To each his own, I don't need to know. But most importantly, he did very much take that Enzo Castellari approach, and he placed himself in the perspective of the audience member, what they want to see, what the kinds of things that excite them, what the payoff should be. and overall what's going to lead to a good hour and a half of escapism and satisfaction, and a movie that they might actually be thinking about a few days later, even if it isn't necessarily deep or meaningful. Although I guess you could argue the case in terms of Backrooms, whether it is or whether it isn't. He did do a great job in, I guess, identifying purely what cinema's all about, what it should be about. The director can be an artist, but it isn't all about the auteur, which was a point that Enzo Castellari was very firm on, a point that he believed in, and the reason that he was working for so long. I believe he may still be working, for all I know. Let us know in the comments if you're aware. Also, let us know in the comments what your favourite Enzo Castellari movie is, what you think of Enzo Castellari, maybe any Enzo Castellari movies that you've been meaning to check out but haven't yet, so that others can chime in and offer some thoughts. But yeah, seeing Backrooms did kind of remind me of Enzo's approach a bit. Wildly different directors, of course, but the guy knew what the brief was. Enzo always knew what the brief was. The guy that made Backrooms knew the brief was basically to essentially to bring a nightmare to the screen. It did feel very much like a dream or a nightmare, Backrooms. It didn't necessarily need to educate us on current global geopolitics or anything like that, or social issues. Essentially, it was all about replicating that nightmare experience of things being a bit off, just a little bit off at first, and then kind of accelerating. And it did feel like a nightmare captured on screen. So, as I said, that is one to check out. Off the subject of Enzo briefly, but check it out before it's poorly imitated over hundreds of times, as is sure to happen by people that don't understand why it worked over the next 12 or 18 months. But back to Enzo. He was one in a million, and he knew his craft. He knew his craft much better than anyone working in Hollywood today, in my opinion. And the proof of the pudding is that he used to have detractors, people talking down about his movies, but I guarantee you, if you watch any Netflix original movie now, or any of the movies on these streaming services, and then watch something like 1990 The Bronx Warriors, or Bronx Warriors 2 straight after, Bronx Warriors is going to look like Citizen Kane, by example. You'll forget the Netflix original or the contemporary movie within about 5 seconds, and certainly you'll be returning to Enzo Castellari, but you won't be returning to these Netflix movies, these Netflix originals or series anytime soon. So the proof's in the pudding. Truth gets revealed. Authenticity gets revealed eventually, despite all of the Hollywood propaganda. And in Enzo Castellari's case, he has a lot to be proud of, and we have a lot to be vicariously proud of. And if by any chance you did click on this video without knowing who Enzo Castellari is, without having seen any of his movies, I'd advise you to check out some of his movies. Perhaps some of my good viewers, my good strange and unusual cinema viewers, my loyal viewers, might give some recommendations for their favourite Enzo Castellari movie, and that'll give you a good starting point to check out this truly unique and truly unforgettable Italian filmmaker. So that's about all I've got on Enzo Castellari. This channel is Fulci Metal Jacket, so I started out just doing reviews, but I'm kind of burnt out on reviews now, and at least for a little while. So I thought I'd try a few different things, and I'm also starting to talk about other things that I'm interested in as well. So if you'd like to check that out, by all means. If you have no interest, that's fine too. That's the way the YouTube algorithm rolls. But if you enjoyed this one, by all means, if you want to like, share or subscribe so you don't miss the next. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, great life, and enjoy your evening. And as always, take it easy.